If the Sabbath day is the seventh day, why is everyone calling the first day of the week the Sabbath day?
Sunday works for people because that's most people off day.
They made the first day of the week. So
Yeah,
that's the
Sunday.
tradition why we worship on Sunday.
Yeah, right.
Welcome back to another episode on Global Impact. I'm your host, Jay Wills. This is a short video in response to a question that was asked last night. Check it out.
Kind of off topic, but if the Sabbath day is the seventh day, why is everyone calling the first day of the week the Sabbath day?
Oh man, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, the Sabbath is. I did a teaching on the Sabbath day though.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation because that's a big argument in the church. It is. Everybody know, the Saturday is the Sabbath. It's not an argument, but no, I ain't gonna get into that. I ain't gonna, because that's a rabbit hole.
Saturday is the Sabbath. That didn't change. Then the first day of the week is Sunday, even according to the calendar. The early church made on the first day of the week to worship. That's why we do worship on Sunday. I do know, I think, is it in the one of 1689, they end up calling the Sunday as the Sabbath, but biblically speaking, nothing changed there, okay? Saturday is still the Sabbath, Sunday is the first day of the week, the resurrection day. That's it.
Right.
The Lord is our Sabbath,
right?
And we don't have no certain day to worship the Lord.
Absolutely not.
You
can worship Him on Monday, Wednesday, Friday,
morning, noon, night.
Exactly. On a bad day, a good day, you better worship Him.
Sunday works because of the context of people's work schedule.
Exactly.
If we can just answer that without, because I know a lot of people want to, it's a whole theological breakdown, of course. But we can get into the whole semantics of that. We could.
Right.
But at the end of the day, Sunday works for people because that's most people off day.
Exactly. I like, and I like what, I like
Sunday
what Jay
is
said.
the first day of the week, because that's in Acts, right? They made the first day of the week. So that's the tradition why we worship on Sunday.
Yeah, right. It's
plus Christ rose again on Sunday. So it's like, to celebrate Resurrection Sunday, we worship on Sunday.
Man, ain't no, look, ain't no, man, worship God every day. You know what I'm saying? And people try to get into, you can't do it. Well, I mean, goodness, worship God every day.
Now, since I wasn't able to make it last night, I'm deciding to do a video this morning answering this question with the scriptures. And I'm going to say right off the bat, keeping the Sabbath does not save you. I know that might piss a lot of Sabbath keepers off, but keeping the Sabbath doesn't save you. Why? Let's start here. Ephesians 2:8. For by grace are ye saved through faith. For by grace are ye saved through faith, and not that of yourselves. It is a gift of God, not of works. Lest any man should boast. I'm starting with this for a reason. Just because you keep the Sabbath or don't keep the Sabbath, whichever way you want to do it, it don't save you either way, because we're saved by grace through faith. So when did it begin? Genesis 2:3, and God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. So we all see and agree, Saturday, the seventh day of the week, is the Sabbath. How do we know this? Because God blessed it and sanctified it. Where else can this weekly Sabbath be seen at? Exodus 20. Look at verse 1. And God spake all these words, saying. All right? So that's how this starts off. Look at verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Not forget it. Remember it. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, daughter, manservant, maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Now, if we go back up and slow this down, Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor. This don't say 6 days shalt thou worship, or 6 days is the Sabbath, or 6 days is holy. This says 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is something different here. Is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it, thou shalt not do what you normally do. So what about in the New Testament? Matthew 28 verse 1. Now after the Sabbath, as the first day of the week began to dawn, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to the tomb. So how many times does the New Testament mention the first day of the week? Matthew 28:1, we just read it. Now after the Sabbath, as the first day of the week began to dawn, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to see the tomb. Very early in the morning on the first day of the week, they came to the tomb when the sun had risen. Mark 16:9, now when he arose early on the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had cast 7 demons. Luke 24:1, now on the first day of the week, very early in the morning, they and certain other women with them came to the tomb, bringing the spices which they had prepared. John 20 verse 1, now upon the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb early, while it was still dark, and saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb. John 20 verse 19, then the same day at evening, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut, where the disciples were assembled for fear of the Jews. So we see right here in John 20, they was together in fear of the Jews. They weren't worshiping. Acts 20 verse 7. Now on the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to do what? Break bread. Paul, ready to depart the next day, spoke to them and continued his message until midnight. 1 Corinthians 16:2. On the first day of the week, let each one of you lay something aside, storing up as he may prosper, that there be no collections when I come. So in the New Testament, we see that the first day of the week is mentioned 8 times, but none of those 8 times reference the first day of the week being the Sabbath of the Lord. What about Paul or the other apostles? Did they observe the Sabbath? Acts 17:2. Then Paul, as his custom was, went in to them, and for 3 Sabbaths reasoned with them from the scriptures. What does for 3 Sabbaths mean? For 3 weeks, 3 Sabbaths, 1 Sabbath, 2 Sabbaths, 3 Sabbaths. That's 3 weeks. Explaining and demonstrating that the Christ had to suffer and rise again from the dead. So Paul was preaching the gospel on the Sabbath, and the scriptures say that it was his custom to go in to worship on Sabbath. Acts 13:14, but when they departed from Perga, they came to Antioch in Pisidia, and went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and sat down. Acts 13:42. So when the Jews went out of the synagogue, the Gentiles begged that these words might be preached to them when? The next Sabbath. Look at verse 44. On the next Sabbath, almost the whole city came together to do what? To hear the word of the Lord. So it wasn't just the Jews. Now we have the Gentiles. Acts 16:13. And on the Sabbath day, we went out of the city to the riverside, where prayer was customarily made, and we sat down and spoke to the women who met there. Acts 18:3. So because he was of the same trade, he stayed with them and worked. For by occupation they were tent makers, and he reasoned in the synagogue every Sabbath, and persuaded both Jews and Greeks. We see Paul was busy, Acts 2:46. So continuing daily with one accord in the temple, and breaking bread from house to house, they ate their food with gladness and simplicity of heart. Look at verse 47. Praising God and having favor with all the people, and the Lord added to the church daily those who were being saved. This doesn't mean that this was a new Sabbath, or that every day was Sabbath and all of that stuff. This text don't mean that. This says, so continuing daily with one accord in the temple. So just because we go to church or worship, it doesn't make it Sabbath. I just wanted that to be clear. So then what law was nailed to the cross? Colossians 2:14, blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to his cross. What does this sound like? Deuteronomy 31:26. Take this book of the law and put it put it in the side of the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, that it may be there for what? A witness against thee. So if we go back to Colossians, we see that blotting out these handwriting of ordinances that was against us, nailing it to his cross. Let's keep reading though. And having spoiled principalities and powers, he made a show of them openly, triumphing over them in it. Let no man therefore judge you in meat, or in drink, or in respect of an holy day, or of new moon, or of Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ. In Leviticus 23, there's a list of 7 Sabbaths, and it involves meat, drink, and Sabbath days. All right. Verse 5, in the 14th day of the first month, at even is the Lord's Passover. On the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread. Verse 10, speak unto the children of Israel and say unto them, when ye be come into the land which I give unto you, ye shall reap the harvest thereof. Then ye shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits. That's the 3rd Sabbath. Verse 16, even unto the morrow after the 7th Sabbath shall ye number 50 days. Pentecost Jubilee. Verse 24, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, in the 7th month, in the 1st day of the month, shall ye have a Sabbath, a memorial of blowing of trumpets and holy convocation, the feast of trumpets. That's 5 yearly Sabbaths. Verse 27, also on the 10th day of this 7th month, there shall be a day of atonement. Verse 34, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, the 15th day of this 7th month shall be the feast of tabernacles. All right. 7 annual Sabbaths. What do these deal with? Look how Leviticus 23 starts off. These are the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in what? Their seasons. Not every week, not every day. In their seasons, annually, yearly. As you see, ye must eat. Ye shall offer an offering made by fire. Look at this, wave in the sheaf. Look at this, meat offerings. Look at that, the drink offerings. So we see within these 7 yearly Sabbaths, it deals with food and drink and offerings and all of that stuff. What does Colossians say? Blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to his cross. Let no man therefore judge you in meat, or in drink, or in respect of a holy day, or of new moon, or of Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ. Christ fulfilled all of that by dying. So we no longer have to do any of that, because it all pointed to him. It has nothing to do with the weekly Sabbath, because nowhere in the 10 Commandments does it talk about food and drink. Only in the law of Moses, in the book of the law. Galatians 3:10, for as many as are of the works of the law are under the curse, for it is written, cursed is everyone that continueth not in all things which are written where? In the book of the law to do them. So what is this book of the law? We just read that in Deuteronomy 31. Look at verse 26. Take this book of the law and put it in the side of the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, that it may be there for a witness against thee. And we seen over in Colossians that is what was what? Blotted out. Deuteronomy 30:10. If thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes, which are written in this book of the law. So do we see the difference between his commandments and the book of the law? They're 2 totally different things. John 15:10. If ye keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. John 14:15. If ye love me, keep my commandments. Not if you want to be saved, keep them. He said, if you love me, you will keep them. And I will pray the Father, and he shall give you another comforter, that he might be with you forever. This is talking about the Holy Ghost. But what does this verse sound like? Jesus is saying, if ye keep my commandments, I'll pray the Father, and he will give you the Holy Ghost. So what does that sound like? Acts 5:32. And we are his witnesses of these things, and so is also the Holy Ghost, whom God has given to them who do what? Obey him. 1 John 2:3. And hereby we do know that we know him, if we keep his commandments. He that saith, I know him, and keepeth not his commandments is what? A liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoso keepeth his word, in him verily is the love of God, what? Perfected. Revelation 22:14. Blessed are they that do his commandments. Blessed are they that obey him, that they may have right to the tree of life and may enter in through the gates into the city. Revelation 14:11. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever, and they have no rest day nor night, who worship the beast and his image, and whoso receiveth the mark of his name. Here is the patience or the endurance of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Did y'all know that the Sabbath is going to be kept in the new earth? Isaiah 66:22. For as the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, shall remain before me, saith the Lord, so shall your seed and your name remain. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one what? Sabbath to another, shall what? All flesh come to worship before me, saith the Lord. So there is not one person that is going to be saved, that is going to be in the new earth, that will not observe the Sabbath. The Bible says that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, all flesh, all people that are saved shall come to worship before me. All right. So why did Jesus die? Romans 8:3. For what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, God sending his own son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin. Hold up. Wait a minute. What's sin? 1 John 3:4. Whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law. For sin is the transgression of the law. Sin is breaking the law of God. So knowing what sin is, God sending his own son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin, condemned sin in the flesh, that the righteousness or the right doing of what? The law might be fulfilled or carried out in us, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. Again, nobody is saved by keeping the law. We are saved by grace through faith. Jesus said, if you love me, you'll obey me. You'll keep my commandments. That's the scriptures. I wish I was on that live last night so I could have answered this. My stance, according to the scriptures, the Sabbath matters. And one of the biggest reasons the Sabbath matters is this. Exodus 20 verses 11. For in 6 days the Lord, this is letting us know who this is, made heaven and earth. Creator, the sea and all that in them is. This lets us know that God created everything. The only commandment in the law that says remember is the exact commandment that points out that God is the creator of heaven and earth and the sea, the fountains of water, all of that. My stance, does the Sabbath matter? Absolutely. Are you saved by it? Negative. I want to show you guys some historical evidence. Check this out. First, we must understand that the Emperor Constantine enforced keeping the Sabbath on the first day of the week, which he calls the Venerable Day of the Sun. Venerable means commanding respect, suggesting the sun deity should be respected. The text of Constantine's Sunday law of 321 AD is, on the venerable day of the sun, let the magistrates and people residing in the cities rest, and let all workshops be closed. In the country, however, persons engaged in agriculture may freely and lawfully continue their pursuits, because it often happens that another day is not suitable for gain sowing or vine planting, lest by neglecting the proper moment for such operations, the bounty of heaven should be lost. This forced Sabbath may explain why some groups were observing both the seventh day of the week as the Sabbath, but then also meeting on the first day of the week. The people of Constantinople and also everywhere assembled together on the Sabbath as well as on the first day of the week, which custom is never observed at Rome or Alexandria. This is interesting in that only the Christians of Rome and Constantinople forsook the Sabbath day while other churches continue keeping it. Constantine must have had quite an influence over the Roman Christians and Catholics. The primitive Christians did keep the Sabbath of the Jews. Therefore, the Christians for a long time together did keep their conventions on the Sabbath. in which some portion of the law were read, and this continued till the time of the Laodicean Council. The ancient Christians were very careful in the observation of Saturday, or the seventh day. It is plain that all the Oriental churches and the greatest part of the world observed Sabbath as a festival. Said they held religious assemblies on the Sabbath, not because they were infected with Judaism, but to worship Yeshua, the master of the Sabbath. Later, those who observed the Sabbath were persecuted and killed by the Catholic Church. When the Jesuit St. Francis Xavier arrived in India, he immediately requested to the Pope to set up the Inquisition there. Today, some of the leading Baptists even have admitted that Sunday Sabbath isn't in the scriptures. There was and is a commandment to keep the Sabbath day holy, but the Sabbath day was not on Sunday. It will be said, however, and with some show of triumph, that the Sabbath was transferred from the seventh to the first day of the week. Where can the record of such transaction be found? Not in the New Testament. Of course, I quite well know that Sunday did come into use in early Christian history as a religious day, as we learned from the Christian fathers and sources. But what a pity that it comes branded with the mark of paganism and christened with the name of a sun god, when adopted and sanctioned by the papal apostasy and bequeathed as a sacred legacy to Protestantism. Dr. Edward Hiscox, author of the Baptist Manual. We can say Jesus is our Sabbath and all of that stuff, and we observe Sunday because Jesus rose from the grave and all of that, but there is no biblical backing for any of that. There is only one Sabbath, and that is Saturday, the seventh day of the week. Sunday was brought in. For every truth of God, there is going to be a counterfeit. That's how the devil played the game. Revelation 1:10, I was in the spirit when? On the Lord's day. Wait a minute, John. When is that? Isaiah 58:13. If thou turn away thy foot from the Sabbath, from doing thy pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, the holy of the Lord honorable, and shall honor him, not doing thine own ways, nor finding thine own pleasure. Do y'all see? The Lord's day, scripturally, is the Sabbath, his holy day. He claims the Sabbath as his day, not Sunday.